Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Casting Angles with Mac Brown. How you doing, Mac?
Doing great, Marvin.
Are you staying out of trouble?
Trying to.
Was Santa Claus good to you?
Oh yeah, Santa Claus was good, and we've been busy with on the show season now, so we're doing a lot of traveling right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we wanted to talk about this time, and we'll talk about your show schedule here in a minute, but wanted to talk about, we're in that time of the winter where sometime in January, February, we're going to probably get, 2 to 3 weeks of really kind of cold weather, and we're going to have to basically really think about fishing low and slow, and just wanted to kind of talk about that and give people some tips.
Okay. Let's talk about being really slow in the winter. Like when we get those kind of patterns, like what happened at Christmas when it got down near 0 to 5 degrees here for that 4 days. That kind of weather puts the water temp right down at around 33 degrees here, because we don't have a tailwater like fishing like the national park streams. You got really high elevation, 6,000 plus feet of upper headwater. And you got a lot of ice and stuff in the water, but everything's going to come right down to 33. So at that type of temperature, you want to get in somewhere nice and deep, deepest hole you can find, and just camp out there and don't leave it. Because that's where the fish are. Just, it's not going to be, every few casts you're getting a strike or a hookup. You just have to be really persistent and throw a whole lot of casts to get rewarded. Because you really have to almost bump them in the noses when the conditions are like that. They're not going to move out of their way very far to come get it.
Yeah, and that's really kind of holds true really until you kind of get up to close to 40 degrees. They'll have a little bit more activity, and they're going to be really lethargic. And you and I were talking about this before, that one of the benefits of fishing the same piece of water over and over throughout the year is looking for spring seeps, going and fishing when it rains, because the rain will actually warm the water up. And some of those tricks are looking for the sunny spots, trying to find those things to kind of tilt things in your favor.
That's right. And some of the tailwaters up here have that. Underwater springs. And because they're tailwaters, like the Nantahala specifically, and there's quite a few springs on the Nantahala that feed into the river from the river bottom. And those are like gold in those kind of conditions. To know where those springs are and just to camp out and stay there, right where the spring enters in and downstream of that within 100 yards. And that makes all the difference when it's cold like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of, we talk about, I would say too, the way to kind of find those spots is those are the exact same spots the fish are in when it's really, really hot in like July and August too, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Like when the water's off, they're going to go to those underwater springs when the water, gets warm, like when it goes off. And yeah, that makes it interesting.
Yeah.
Like the way a tailwater, when it comes off and on, when it's either extreme from too cold or too hot, it works. It works in verse, I guess is the way to say that. So it's kind of the same, but those underwater springs are still the best places to be if you're wade fishing on that type of setup.
Yeah. And probably also too, to really talk to people about how to fish down and have good strike detection. I don't know, what's your favorite rig for fishing that time of year?
This time of year, I think my favorite is I run a really long leader, and I like kind of like an Arkansas rig, which is two really small strike detectors about the size of a pea. And I like to run 2 of them. And the reason is I can see when I fish a cross current, I can see the relationship of the one closest to the hook to just barely move an 1/8 inch slow down, 1/4 inch slow down. And it's light enough to where it's kind of like balancing the weight of the flies that I'm throwing. I'm throwing a lot of really light flies this time of year. And let's see, mostly brass, like 2 millimeters and smaller. And either brass or glass, or because we're fishing a lot of the water on the soft seams off on the edge too. There's a lot of fish sitting in that kind of water right now where the water current is like 1 foot a second or slower. And that's where a lot of the fish will be, like knee deep, 1 to 2 feet a second and slower water current. And that can be really effective. And the reason I think I prefer that this time of year is when the water was low before all of the rain events the last week, that was working really well because you're staying out of the window of being seen. Of course, it's a lot easier to catch these fish when they don't know you're standing there. So I think that's one of the drawbacks, as big as tight lining and the big rage of tight lining still the last few years. I think that backfires on people when they're trying to fish a deep pool and they're standing right on top of them on a wild stream.
Yeah, and I would say too, just to help people understand, I guess kind of the way to think about your strike detection system is you've got two P's basically on your leader. And you're, if they're under slight tension, they're tight, and you're just looking for that one closest to the flies just to move a little bit, right? And that's kind of how you're watching your drift and getting your strike detection.
Yeah, that's one of my. If it gets lower, even a lot of times I'll use a cider, like a 2-foot cider, built into the leader, and that works real well too. And just grease it with mucilin. Or snow seal is what I prefer. Like I use a lot of snow seal to grease the whole cider part. And that works really well if you're fishing really light flies, like small flies, like 18 and smaller. I like that method a lot too. But the P's work better if you're running more like a 2 millimeter brass or tungsten bead. That's going to balance that rig out better.
Yeah, it's funny you say snow seal. It gives me a Boy Scout flashback to waterproofing my hiking boots.
Oh, yeah. That's what we use it for a lot.
Yeah.
And telly boots, for skiing. But with all this climate change, we don't have a lot of cross-country skiing going on these days up here. But we used to.
Yeah, and then I would say, too, about being down, if folks are fishing a more traditional strike indicator, because this is not the time to try to fish a dry dropper because you need a light indicator because you're going to have drag on your flies. And, the bugs are on the bottom and the bugs aren't moving very much, just like the fish. So,
that's right.
Yeah. So for folks to watch that strike indicator and make sure that it's moving slower than the bubbles, because if it's not, you're not down and you're not on the bottom.
That's right. And another one too is we run a lot of multi-fly rigs this time of year. And so as it moves, most of the time, if it's in that cold pattern that we're talking about, they're not going to be coming way up in the middle column. And so I want to put the 3 flies all down there where I want them in that zone. A lot of times I'll rig something heaviest on the top dropper, and then small and small follow. I mean, that makes sure all 3 of them are staying down, rather than a lot of times I'll see people rig and they have all the weight on the point, and then the other 2 flies are never in the zone, so they might as well just cut them off. If you want to fish the 3 flies in that boundary layer down low, that's the way I like to rig it. By fishing upstream, throwing that rig upstream 30, 35 feet. Then all 3 flies are down in that zone. I think that works pretty well.
Yeah. Stonefly, beaded pheasant tail, and a midge larva, and you're probably in good shape.
That's it. There's a lot of black stones going on right now.
Yeah.
We've been seeing those a lot. As far as hatches, let's see, last 3 weeks, not been a whole lot of hatches. There's been some midge activity. That's about it.
Yeah.
I keep waiting to see the big prolific blue wing hatches that we can have, but we haven't had them thus far, at least where I've been going. I've been going a lot up in the park and kind of starved with those right now. I'm not sure why we're not seeing them. Might be because the cold snap at Christmas still has them in slowed down, but they're not coming off. A lot of times I think that happens more up into February where we see the really good blue wing stuff in the park.
Yeah.
But we've not had any blue wings to write home about the last few weeks.
Yeah. And so I would say too, folks, these are for you. And so if you have questions that you want Mac and I to talk about, if you shoot those to us, either, DM us on social media or email them to us, we're happy to put them in the rotation and answer your questions. And, we were talking, Mac, before we started recording, and you are traveling Mac. You are burning it up on the show circuit. Where can folks find you, take a class, see a demonstration, get a book signed? Where are you going to be?
I'm going to Edison Wednesday this week. And then after Edison, we'll come back here to Bryson. We'll be back here a couple of days, and the Atlanta show happens. And I think there's a 2-week break between Atlanta and Denver. Then we'll be in Denver, Colorado for that show, and then Pleasanton, California the week after Denver. And that's the shows that I'm going to do, through the winter months.
Yeah. And so those are all the Foremski shows. And folks, if you want to get the dates and ticket information for those, links to all of those are on the events page on the Articulate Fly website. And, Mac, I know you're guiding, you're running schools and stuff. Where can folks find information about that, and how can they follow you on social media?
Yeah, the schools are basically run through the spring and fall. And then there's a lot of weekend events that are like wet fly clinics, nymphing clinics, dry fly clinics that are like 2 days long for the people that can't, do the whole week long school. And those are set up kind of for the weekend classes that'll just make it easier to cover those topics and dedicate the whole allotted time just to that specific subject. A lot of people always ask these questions about wet fly or dry fly, like, where do I learn that? Well, it's hard to teach all that in a single day with somebody. So it's easier to be like in a school environment and just go A to Z through that 2 days where they get immersed in that one tactic. You know what I mean? I think it's asking a lot to say, we're going to learn casting and learn how to streamer fish, wet fly and dry fly all in the same day. That's just not realistic. I mean, I don't think that's a realistic goal because it's not really doing it justice,
Yeah. So folks can head to your website. And then what's your favorite flavor of social media? You like Instagram, Facebook? Where can folks find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on there. I don't do a whole lot on Instagram really, but I mean, I have an account at Mac Brown Fly Fish and then Fly Fishing Guide School. And then I have one on the Facebook one too, but probably more like when I post things about a show or pictures from a show, I usually post it on like Instagram, and it'll post to my Facebook page just under my name at Mac Brown. And that's usually what I find. I got overwhelmed trying to keep posting something for, my outfitter business, then post it for my guide school business and post it for my personal page. It's just a whole lot to keep up with, Marvin. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, you got to get some people.
That's right. That's right. But it's fun. Those will be fun classes. I'll tell you, those shows. There'll be a lot of good classes at all of those events. I mean, I was looking at the itinerary the other day from all the different things being offered, and there's just a whole lot of good classes going to happen the next few weeks. I got excited when I saw all the different things that were going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say is I'll drop all your links in the show notes, and folks, try to catch up with Mac when he's at one of the Foremski shows. I think you're doing all of them for the rest of the year. And, say hi, take a class, watch a casting demonstration, get a book signed, and, or sign up for one of Mac's schools, or, book a day with him on the water. And, if you can't make it to a show, if the weather's nice, you should go fishing. And if not, you should tie flies. So tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Mac.
Tight lines, Marvin.